Today I'm going to talk about the 1981 classic, The Burning. It's a first time watch for me. The Burning!
And now, here to entertain you all, because every day he's hustling. Side Hustle Cinema.
Well, I think I deserve a like just for that cheesy intro alone. And while you're at it, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to leave a comment about anything we talk about today, go ahead and do that as well. And with all that out of the way, welcome to the channel, Side Hustle Cinema here. And today I am talking about The Burning. The Burning. This was a first time watch for me. It's a fairly simple plot to the movie. It's your basic, revenge story. There's a caretaker at the camp, and some of the kids pull a horrible prank on him where they put a skull that had some candles in the eyes in his cabin while he was asleep. And then they start to, bang on the windows to wake him up, and he sees the skull, gets scared, and that's what they were going for, but he knocks the skull over, and it ends up catching his bed on fire. And then he had, gasoline and different things in the shed, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So, his whole cabin goes up in flames, and he's all on fire. And so he gets horribly burned. And I guess he spends the next 5 years in and out of the hospital getting skin grafts and things that they tell you, didn't take. And so he ends up being horribly deformed and hell-bent on getting revenge for the people that wronged him. And usually there's not a lot to talk about when it comes to cast of, an early horror movie like this one. But this one actually has some pretty interesting people in it. This was one of the first movies for Fisher Stevens, who, is a actor. He's been in quite a few different things. He was in Short Circuit. He was in Early Edition. It was a series back in the 90s. And, he's done some directing, some producing, some writing. He's been around. This was one of his first movies. This was also the first movie for Holly Hunter. She plays kind of a small part. Her character's name is Sophie in the movie. The funniest one is Jason Alexander, from Seinfeld. This was his first movie, and he plays a character named Dave, and is really one of the better characters, the more likable characters in the movie. I mean, he's really funny. And just, generally kind of seemed like a nice guy in the movie. It was funny, though, watching him because, that was his first movie, and he still has the same, cadence and delivery for his lines back then that he did during Seinfeld. I mean, it sounds exactly the same. It's just weird to kind of look at and have this younger version with the hair and, that'll keep you kind of entertained on its own. Brian Backer is also in the movie. He plays Alfred, and you'd recognize him from probably Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I think that's, where he was best known from. Yeah, but he kind of plays a geek, kind of a nerd character in this one, like he did in Fast Times. Also kind of interesting about this movie that it was Harvey Weinstein's first production that he had done, for first movie that he had produced. Him and his partner Michael Cole, and Michael Cole and Harvey's brother Bob actually wrote the screenplay for The Burning. And this was before they had created Miramax, which Miramax was named after Harvey and Bob's parents, Miriam and Max Weinstein. Now, a lot of people call this a Friday the 13th type ripoff, but they like to point out that they actually had a screenplay for this submitted before the screenplay for Friday the 13th was submitted. But Friday the 13th was made first. So they like to claim that this was, an original idea, just based off of, campfire tales of, the Cropsey killer that I guess originated in the Northeast. The first title to the burning was actually going to be The Cropsey Maniac. They hired British director Tony Maylam as their director for the movie, who had really only done British rock documentaries up until this point. He went on to do a few things, but never really did too much. The production didn't go that smoothly, and what was supposed to have been around a $500,000 budget ballooned all the way up to $1.5 million. And there were some issues, with location and fighting a little bit over, the details of the script and how things would, the story and how things would ultimately go. At one point, they even turned to Tom Savini and wanted him to write and direct the third act of the movie. But it eventually got worked out, and it is what it is. So Tom Savini actually, did the special effects for this movie. And when he took this movie, he turned down doing Friday the 13th Part 2. His reason for turning down Part 2 for Friday the 13th was he didn't really like the story. He thought Jason was dead, and he didn't like the fact that they were bringing him back, because he was supposed to have drowned. The movie opened in theaters on May 8th, 1981, in 110 screens in Florida. Later on that month, on May 22nd, it had more of a regional release, but never really received a very wide release. It was released across the country, but never in that many theaters. It actually debuted at number 23. Happy Birthday to Me was number 1, and Friday the 13th Part 2 was number 2 at the box office. It only ended up grossing $707,000 domestically, but it did pretty well over in Japan, making $1.2 million in just its first 16 days. A lot of gore had to be trimmed out of the movie just to get that R rating. It was a pretty gory movie, but, I didn't think it was that over the top. Now, the movie itself, I really enjoyed it. It starts out, with that prank and him getting burned. And then it jumps ahead 5 years, and that's when he leaves the hospital and actually tries to solicit a hooker. And, he's all deformed and everything, so, she didn't, see him at first, because he's wearing, almost like a dark man outfit. Trench coat and hat and the whole deal. But when she gets a look at him, she freaks out, and then that triggers him, and so he ends up killing her. But then it's kind of unique in a way that there really isn't any other killings for a long time in this movie. It goes back to the camp now 5 years later, and one of the kids who was in on the prank, he ends up being like one of the head camp counselors now. And so for the next probably a good 30 minutes or so, the movie's just about the campers and watching their interactions and stuff, which was really kind of fun. I started to kind of wonder after a while when I was watching it. It's like, aren't they going to start getting killed at some point? But yeah, it just spends a lot of time, watching them do camp stuff, which was, I enjoyed that part of it. I like a little levity in a horror movie. I don't like it to be all dark all the time. I'm not talking about, something being a horror comedy, because, this isn't a horror comedy. But, when they take time to show people actually enjoying themselves, I don't know, it gives you a chance to, kind of like some of the characters. But while watching the development of the characters, what was also pretty interesting was there didn't really seem to be anyone who stood out to me as being who's going to be the lead character, who's going to make it to the end. In a lot of horror movies, you kind of know pretty much right away who the final girl's going to be, or who the final two might be. This one was a little bit, it was a little bit odd. I wasn't 100% sure. So Brian Backer's character, was kind of that picked on nerd. And, I was thinking, well, maybe he'll be like one of the final people. But then they had him like doing weird stuff. Like, he likes this girl. And so, he's like peeping on her in the shower and stuff. And, I mean, it just made him seem like a little bit creepy. Like a couple of the guys in the camp kind of wanted to beat him up. And, I probably would have too. Not necessarily a hero type quality. And then a lot of the other characters in the camp, were kind of, a little bit macho, a little bit maybe too aggressive with the females. It was kind of, it was some strange behavior for sure. Most of that stuff probably wouldn't fly today. But it was definitely interesting getting to know the characters a little bit. And there's quite a bit of nudity in the movie as well. a lot of sex scenes or just getting naked in general going on. But that's to be expected, especially with these early slasher movies. So the group goes out on this retreat away from their main camp, and they have to go by canoe. It's downriver, and that's where all the killing begins. And I won't tell you the whole story, the whole movie and stuff. But I will tell you that, there's a scene that you need to see. I mean, I'm just going to say it was the canoe scene. Everyone probably who's seen the movie knows what I'm talking about. This was my first time watching it. I had no idea. And so, basically a girl goes missing, and so do all the canoes. And so now how do they get back to the main camp? Well, they fashion together a makeshift raft, and half of them get on the raft, and they're headed back to camp to, get some help, round up some canoes, get the rest of them. And while they're paddling their way back to camp, they spot one of the canoes. And so they make their way over to the canoe, and I'm not going to go any further, but that was a jaw dropper. I wished I would have filmed my reaction to that. That would have been fun to have had on tape. I don't usually, I don't really like reaction type videos too much because, I'm not someone who jump scares or freaks out too easily, and I don't want to fake, do a fake, ooh, that kind of thing, So, but I do wish I would have had that one on film, because, that was a jaw dropper for sure. So this was a Scream Factors Collector's Edition release. I wish I had gotten in on a slipcover, but, no slipcover on this one for me. It doesn't have a ton of special features. There's just a few on here. You get an audio commentary from the director, and then you get Blood and Fire Memories. Now that's the one to watch. That's definitely the feature to watch. That's totally hosted by Tom Savini. He goes through a lot of the effects and how he made them, and a lot of the production stories that went on during the filming. That's a great special feature. You also get theatrical trailers and TV spots and things like that. So, decent on those special features, but definitely check out that one with Tom Savini. That one's great. The video, it wasn't like they did a remaster on it. It got a 2K scan, but I don't think there was much like film restoration done on it. The close-ups look pretty clean, pretty crisp, but the wide shots, it got a little soft, but that's okay. I mean, in a way, I really don't mind it for movies like this, when especially like the 80s slasher movies. A lot of people talk about like film grain, how it gives it that filmic look. Well, when you're talking about like an 80s slasher, there is kind of a look that you kind of are used to seeing. So it's not, it didn't like take me out of the movie, or it's not unpleasant or anything. It's probably the best the movie can look without a full restoration job on it. Audio wise, it's a 5.1, master audio, which basically means it's your basic audio. Nothing special there. It's all front loaded. There's not a whole lot of even rear speaker action too much. So, if you're watching with a sound bar, you're gonna get pretty much the same experience as someone with the full theater set up. It was really just front heavy and not a lot of rear speaker action. Nothing going on with the overheads. It's pretty basic, but it was fine. It was okay. The score's okay. I mean, there wasn't like any there wasn't really much of a soundtrack as far as like songs go. But the score itself was fine. Nothing too epic. But this was a lower budget movie, so it is what it is. I didn't expect a lot from that. So this was an interesting watch for me because, a lot of times, nostalgia plays a big part in these movies, especially these older movies. And so for me, this was a first time watch, so I had no attached nostalgia. And I still enjoyed it. So it just reminded me of like a good solid 80s slasher. I enjoyed a good camp movie. I always enjoy a good camp movie. So I actually highly recommend this movie. I'm looking forward to rewatching it at some point. I'll probably put it on like my summer horror movie kind of watch list. I think next year I'll be interested to see what my feelings are about it when I rewatch it, and tell me like what are some of your favorite like summer horror movies other than of course the what you normally think of with the Friday the 13th or Sleepaway Camp or I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, are there some hidden gems out there that maybe I don't know about, like The Burning? If you guys can think of any, let me know in the comments. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. I know I enjoyed doing this one. And until the next video, you guys stay safe, have fun, and keep watching those movies.